Hi Ram, it's been long since we met. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good, Sriji. Good evening to you. How are you?
Good evening. I'm good. Hello to the viewers. It's been quite some time since we met each other on a topic. Ram, that brings me to a very important context. See, being very good friends and uh, two of us who are always interested in talking on topics which are very relevant to all of us. See, it took me more than 2 to 3 weeks to get in touch with you, and no one in today's busy world is available for someone else all the time, right?
Very true. Very
So
true.
that takes me to an important question.
Mhm.
What if you don't have someone to share your thoughts? Not because they aren't there actually, but probably they were so held up or busy that they couldn't be available when you want.
Mhm.
How do you suggest as someone who's into counseling in such situation?
Okay. I mean, on, on a lighter note, they can actually pick a professional who's going to be available for them on time. But,
Okay,
but
what if the problem was not that intense enough, Raf?
no,
That's
yeah.
the action that someone takes in a serious case, right? Meaning, at least they should feel that the quantum of the problem has gone sufficient
True.
enough or accumulated enough to go to a professional,
Very true.
right?
Which is why I kind of started with the writer that this has to be what do you call on a lighter note, not something serious. But then you
True.
make a very good point, right? Today, I think it's a fairly busy world. Whether the world is busy or not, we
Yeah.
make it quite intense for ourselves, like you said, and everybody has something or the other to do. And what that does is, I mean, it and nobody is free from situations that cause stress or anxiety, right? And quite often we do not have people that we can talk to, right? And I think the irony is that with all the communication tools and everything that is available to us, the only thing it has done is probably put a lot of or a lot more distance between us and the people who care about us or whom we care about today, unfortunately, although it should have enhanced our connections or made connections a lot easier. So it becomes very, very important for us to be able to, how do I put it? Bring out or externalize in some way. And when I say externalize, I'm just to kind of caution people who are viewing, who are available, I mean, who are aware of the psychological intricacies. I'm not talking about the defense mechanism of externalization because that usually means I'm acting out, I'm becoming aggressive and so on. But it's fundamentally about not bottling something up in, right? And it's a situation that is causing me worry or stress, not bottling that in, but actually bringing it out because the conventional wisdom says that if I'm in trouble of some sort, right, I have something that I feel difficult about, and once in a while we catch up, right? I share it with you, you share your difficulties with me, and
Yep.
no matter
Yes.
what it does, it allows us to kind of feel lighter and a lot better,
Vent
right?
it out. Whatever is
Vent it.
accumulated or piped up in the kitchen. Vent it.
Yeah, so kind of bring it out of our system, vent it to somebody, and then uh, okay, so there are two scenarios again, right? So coming back to your question, that is probably one very, very important step, at least for us to feel light, right? At the very outset.
Yes.
So
Yes.
in a busy world, where do I go? I think this is where uh, we can bring the old practice of diary writing. I don't think people do it anymore. I recall back in the days, my grandparents, each of them, every year, I think it was almost a kind of a New Year ritual, right? They'll go get a diary for everybody. And then every single day, they would probably write something. And I think even as
In fact,
children,
all business believed in gifting diaries to people, their
exactly.
clients and customers. Back then, it was a trend to give diaries to
Absolutely.
people.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think today, I think, and then later in the early 2000s, if I recall, when the internet became commonplace, it became quite popular. And people there were free online diary websites that would give you a login, and then it can be your own anonymous entity where you don't have to write. So long story short, I think journaling or diary writing is an excellent way for us to how do I put it, bring out any kind of thoughts or feelings or something. There may be certain things that we feel, what do you call, a certain degree of dissonance about, right? Let's say I did not want to say yes to somebody, let's say at work, but for whatever reason I had to say yes, and that is causing me some amount of internal conflict, which is what we call as dissonance, right? Or I didn't feel like doing something, but I ended up doing it anyway against my own will. So, or I had an argument with somebody when I could have actually avoided that, and now in retrospect, in hindsight, I feel bad about it. right? So one way, like I said, like earlier, we used to have this habit of diary writing where we would actually sit down and write what happened on a daily basis in some summary or some paraphrase form. And this is actually a very effective starting point for us to bring out what is in our mind, to actually put it down. And then, there is an entire system or a set of techniques that are built around this that actually can go all the way from at a very basic level, being available as a mechanism for us to vent out what we want to vent out, to the point where it can actually serve as a basis for us to reflect and grow. So if you ask me, okay, there is somebody who doesn't have anyone to talk to at this point in time, they're kind of overwhelmed, they want to get it out some way, right? This is actually one really nice way of dealing with the whole thing, Shriji.
Ram, in that case, you gave me a very interesting view that one can start journaling to remove what they are being holding.
Mhm.
In that way, I would like to ask two questions. I hope these questions are systematic and they really help the
Mhm.
listeners as well as us.
Mhm.
First question: why do you think these feelings accumulated have to be let out first? Of course,
Mhm.
there is an urge. I will call it as biological as there is a urge to puke out sometimes. If
Hmm.
I can call it that way, please
Hmm.
correct me. You are a
Yeah, yeah.
technical person. I'm just a viewer for this. So the urge will always be there, but please quantify or qualify why it is essential to vent out. Number one.
Hmm.
Number two, how that venting out should also be. Is there a correct or a good way? Of course, there is nothing wrong, but is there a better way of doing things or a
Hmm.
preferred way of doing things? I want you to answer these two questions, Ram, as a viewer.
That is a great, the two really good questions, right? And I think it is quite essential because it gives me the opportunity to demystify certain beliefs also. Number one, as much as we'd like to believe, right? Our
Mm.
systems have, we've evolved over millions of years, right? Through different life forms, and today we are human beings. It's fairly evolved beings. We have a very unique cortical region, the prefrontal cortex, that makes us rational beings, if I may put it that way, right? And also, over just as humans, over the eons when we started as hunter-gatherers till date, we have evolved several mechanisms that have warded off, or rather helped us ward off things that are a threat to our being. Right. So there was a time in our in the human race when there was very clear and present danger. Right. Like for instance, when we lived as hunter-gatherers in caves, or probably we lived even 30, 40 years ago, it wasn't very uncommon for us to sight a snake, or the bulls running around the streets, or dogs chasing us was quite a common thing. Today, most people don't face such problems. Right, good or bad, I do not know. Right, at least we do not have the problems that our caveman forefathers had. Right, the one headache that brings with it, or rather the constant evolution of the civilization and the advancements bring with it, is that we have all this faculty, or all this, the entire essence of our being tuned to be able to be sensitive to risks, sensitive to threats, so on and so forth. It hasn't gone away. Right, we just don't know what to do with it. Right, so what it does is, on occasion, I think it's a very complex phenomenon. We cannot say, hey, this is what is going to cause anxiety or stress to many of the people. It is about who we are when we were born, what is the environment like, how we grow up, what our parents are, what attachment is. There are so many factors. It's a multifactorial system, if I may call it. So let's leave that out. I think if we go into that, will become a topic of its own. So it has brought us to a position where we have a fairly sophisticated, complex system that is capable of dealing with emotional load, but it is not infinitely endowed or infinitely provided for. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And even and like I said, the fundamental emotional apparatus that we have all evolved as a threat management system, right? So, our senses were quite alert. They would trigger things like fear or anger or anything which had a self-preservation and a survival value once upon a time. Okay, so it is not
Mm.
there is a purpose why we, for all of these to be in place. There is a good reason for us to be angry, and so long as it is a very situational, real and present emotional upheaval that we face, we respond to it right away and we are able to give it up. It's over. It is like your random access memory in a
So
computer.
Sorry, I'm interrupting
No,
you
sure, go on.
because you just told a very, very important point relevant to us.
Mhm.
In other words, I'm going to reword whatever you said, but in a context relevant to it. It is not wrong to feel fear, anger,
Mm.
right? Unlike what it is told now. The moment someone is afraid or the moment someone is angry, the first thing people around them say is, no, 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 don't get angry. No, 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 don't fear. But like you said, it's much like a muscle memory. It has been stored in you for generations, and these have had really positive implications.
Yeah, yeah.
So, viewers, let us take this cue from Ram. Let us not say someone you don't be afraid or you don't be angry. It's
Mm.
their response to the situation. They need it.
Perfect.
Please, Ram, please go ahead.
Perfect. No, that's actually a very important summary, because somehow always, even when we raise children, we do whatever we do, we have this notion that people should not express themselves. And that is one of the root causes of
Huh.
why over ages, when this gets bottled up and we start forming all sorts of what do you call socially appropriate or politically correct or socially correct behaviors that do not allow us to be ourselves and express ourselves in a healthy manner. Of course, I'd like to add that, Rider. It later manifests behavioral issues in life, because at one point we are just overwhelmed. Like I said, it is not an infinitely provided system. So it becomes extremely important for us to be able to express ourselves. Right. So there is no shame,
Right.
or there is no need to be guilty that I'm feeling emotional, I'm feeling overwhelmed sometimes, I am feeling a certain conflict between what I believe in and what I have done. We'll all face situations where we'll have to do that. Now, on to the second
Right.
question that you raised. Is there a specific way in which we need to deal with, was it journaling or was it emotions?
Journaling. In fact,
Okay.
you gave a beautiful cue to answering the second question. In your last statement, you said that there is a healthy way of expressing it.
Yeah.
So let me you gave me a very good one. Let me rephrase the second question. Is there a healthy way of
Yeah.
journaling? Are
That's
there
a,
different types of
yeah.
journaling, and you suggest one that's healthy or good?
No, no, okay. The short answer. The short answer is there isn't any specific or a prescribed manner in which we want to do this, because if we start doing that, right, and see what would happen if I write something on paper which is not, let's say, grammatically correct or legible, or it doesn't flow well. I'm not following the rules of grammar. There's no semantic sense. Matter. Nobody else is going to. One of the things people do normally, right? They write a lot of stuff, right, just to give a preview. And one technique they follow is once they feel what do you call, a little more in control of their own emotions, etc., or they're no longer that overwhelmed. If they don't want to keep it, they can just shred it and throw it away. In which case, why do we have to worry about a propriety or a certain appropriate way to write? So there is no real rule there. But we need to take a step back, because, like I said, there is nothing wrong in expressing one's own emotions, or expressing oneself in a given situation. But it has to be healthy. It has to be socially appropriate. Because, for instance, I'm on the road, right, and there is somebody who, there's a very minor somebody hits me from behind. It's not a major accident. They just tap on me from behind. I know why you're laughing. Leave that story for another occasion. But then sometimes what could happen is I have a choice to just explode and shout and all of that, and I can say I got angry or whatever it is, right? But being who we are, we should always, if we are able to say these are the implications, and that's how we are conditioned as humans, and if we are able to respond in a more polite way, or a more appropriate manner, we avoid a lot of long-term trouble. Let's say if there is a conflict at home and there is somebody saying that something that we do not possibly want to hear, it is quite natural to get upset and then, sorry, try to be defensive or try to go have a go at them. But it is never going to lead to healthy conflict resolution, right? So that's why people say take a deep breath sometimes. Take a moment to reflect on what they are saying, understand the other person. There are so many, one too many techniques that are available, and these habits have to be cultivated over time. Okay, so there is a definite healthy way in which we can deal with emotions. And one of the healthy ways in which we can deal with emotions, and not just deal with emotions, uh, but also get a view of who we are, right? Be able to reflect as to who we are, what our thought process is like, in a non-judgmental fashion, right? I use the word reflect here, uh, is journaling, right? It's almost like holding a mirror to ourselves. Okay, so can I go on about
Hmm.
how journaling actually is a way in which
Please,
we can
please.
build capabilities? Okay, great.
Yes, yes.
So let's say I'm in some kind of a emotionally overwhelming scenario, right? Like I said, that is what it is, and I have no means of expressing it anywhere, and somehow it is still boiling within me and I want to do something about it. Right. So there are many ways in which I can do this, right? I can pick up a journal and I can just write a general log of, okay, this is what happened, this is what happened, I'm upset, I'm whatever it is, right? I should have dealt it this way. I backed down, I didn't want to do that, whatever it is, right? We can write whatever comes genuinely onto it. Now I can just write it as a report if that's what I'm comfortable with. I can write a letter to myself, say I can say, Dear Ramanujam, and I can write whatever I want. So one of the, now this is not a rule, okay, but if this journaling practice has to go, let's say, slightly beyond being just a sink for our emotions or feelings, right? And if it has to serve as a kind of an artifact that we can use to improve ourselves or grow, what we have to start doing is follow a certain set of good practices, if I may put it that way. Right. Number one, when we write down something, we have to be non-judgmental, because one of the key things that people who generally feel what do you call, very, very emotionally disturbed, or they're very volatile, is that there is almost always a sense of self-criticality about them. They're not entirely what do you call, satisfied with their sense of self-worth, or they have a low sense of self-worth sometimes. But there is an element of self-criticality about them where they feel, oh, you should have been like this, you were not like this. That is a judgment, right? Even if we are doing it to ourselves. So there is no point in being cruel to ourselves or what do you call, critical about ourselves. When we write, it has to be just an as-is account, a non-judgmental, how do I put it? Venting out, like you said beautifully, right? You gave an example of people just throw out what is there and then we just have to write it down. Yes, Vijay.
In fact, first time when I heard non-judgmental from you, I didn't get the picture, but now it appears very clearly. You are asking us to be non-judgmental about ourselves.
It has to be about ourselves,
right?
because
I just wanted to underscore this point.
Absolutely.
It's not non-judgmental about someone else or the situation. Non-judgmental about us.
About
Please
ourselves.
go ahead.
Yeah, because sometimes we don't give enough credit to ourselves, right? And almost always all our frustrations, all our emotional problems or psychological problems stem from the fact that we don't give ourselves enough credit, and we are very self-critical. So no point doing that. So one thing we can do is we can forget all conventions, all rules. There is no need to write from to, dear sir, subject or whatever, right? They're not writing a letter to anybody. It's about ourselves. And the other thing is, the one thing about writing letters to ourselves, it helps is because it's like writing to a human. You acknowledge your own humanness in the first place. So that's a good way. Some people are very good at doodling. So if you want to do some drawings or doodlings or shading, do whatever you want, but just get the whole thing out of the system. The second thing, again, it is very easy to write cognitively. You understand what I'm saying, right? To analyze the situation, to come up with inferences, to insights. We are not preparing a report for any workplace, right? It's not a CEO or a CTO report that we are producing. It is about expressing ourselves, right? I don't want to use the word venting or anything. Expressing is a far better way of saying it. So we have to be able to express ourselves. So just be very authentic, natural. It can be what people call a stream of consciousness. Just write what comes to your mind. Don't worry about grammar, spelling. Yeah, keep the flow. Exactly. And then it comes out. So once this is done and there is a sense of lightness that comes in, make this a habit. That is very important, right? It's not important just to write every day on a day when we are just overwhelmed. Make writing a habit. Even on a normal day, you can express things like, today I'm actually very grateful because whatever I thought might happen yesterday, I was overwhelmed. Today it was a good day, so I'm grateful. Okay. And then over time, it's important to, in a certain cadence, right? Once a week or something, we can sit with our own journals, take a look at what we have written, see what themes come out, what patterns come out of what we have written down in those journals, right? And then we can start looking at, what does my journal tell me about myself? Who am I as a person? Right? And that forms the basis of any further shaping or modifications that we want to start doing about ourselves, right? In order to be able to manage or deal with our emotions much better. Right. And I think that's what it is, right? And compassion here, I think that is a component we did not talk about so far, right? Because you can still write a non-judgmental, open expression of what we have just felt as a stream of consciousness that flows on a piece of paper. But it is important for us, like I said, we have to give ourselves some credit. We have to validate ourselves. We have to say, in that situation, you did the best you could. There is nothing wrong with it. You're a human being, right? So, and it is not like, a false acknowledgement, or it is not gassing ourselves up, or like you like to put it, we don't, swag our way out of the situation, right? But but it is about giving due credit to ourselves. And compassion, the difference between compassion and sympathy is that sorry, there is no evocation of pity, or I'm not saying, oh yeah, you had a problem. It's not that, right? It says, yes, I acknowledge something went wrong. You were as human as you could be in that situation, but at the same time, you are empowered, you're capable of taking and dealing with his own situation. Compassion comes with an element of empowerment. So when, let's say, I'm compassionate towards you, for instance, right? I don't just sympathize with your problem, right? I don't use empathy as a means to experience, or I don't experience it, but I'm able to see your problem from your point of view. But I also say, yeah, fine, I acknowledge it, but Sriji, I know you are somebody who's capable of dealing with it. So let's sit and reflect on how do you want to take it. So it also reinforces the fact that you are an empowered person, right? That we never do to ourselves, which is why the compassionate part
Hmm.
of compassionate journaling is a very important part, because two things: we have to give ourselves credit, and we have to believe that we are empowered and capable of dealing with our own situation. So when that happens, right, when the patterns emerge or themes emerge, we can say, yeah, I tend to be very short fused because I have a tendency to respond immediately, or I react immediately when somebody says something. What can I do to respond a little more gracefully? Then you know what you need to look for in terms of techniques or approaches that you can take. Then you go online and find out. Then somebody says, hey, follow the 5-4-3-2-1 approach to do some sensory grounding, or maybe just take 4-5 deep breaths before you talk, or tell the other party, can I take a minute to process this and respond, right? So you see, automatically there is a healthier way by which we are dealing with our emotions, Sriji. So I think that really is what will help us. So is compassionate journaling a mechanism that helps us to deal with, is it a healthy mechanism to deal with our emotions? It is actually something that helps us to deal with it. That is not a way by itself, but it paves the way for us to deal with emotions in a healthy way. So it's actually quite an effective tool, if I can put it that way.
Great. I think so. All of us should take inspiration from Bharatiya. So whatever you write Kannamma, Kiliye,
Mm, mm,
Chellame. These are Tamil words. For those of you who don't know Tamil, it simply means, oh my sweetheart or
mm,
little one, right? Address yourself softly. I mean, I don't, for a moment, I'm not meaning to say that only such sweet words are compassion, but like Ram said,
mm,
it's hard to do, but let us practice not being harsh or judgmental on ourselves. And we are not writing, like he insisted, we are not
mm.
writing any report or for any annual budget meeting, notes or minutes. It's after all you who's going to read it. So thanks, Ram. That was a very great note on why someone should release their feelings. Okay, let me change the word, not vent out.
Beautifully put. That is a
Release
release.
what's inside. And the best way to do when someone is not available is to write it down. And while writing it down, also be sweet to you, nice to you, compassionate to you. Compassionate genuine. I think so. I got it right, Ram.
Absolutely. I
Anything I
think
missed?
that nobody could have summarized it any better. I think you did a great job of summarizing. And yeah, as always, I
Oh,
hope it's
right.
used.
This is the compassionate feedback.
No, this is this is really honest. Really honest. As always.
Thanks. Okay.
All
Ram,
right.
I think so. In the last few episodes as well as today's, you spoke about, this 5-4-3-2-1 quite a few number of times. You mentioned it even in your channel, and it's about breathing. Probably in one of our shows, we should have our good friend talk here about breathing and how it helps us, probably. Right?
Absolutely.
We'll
I
do
think
that in future.
we should actually make a slightly longer video on that. We'll do that sometime, Srini. Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you. Thanks,
All
Ram.
right.
Thanks,
Thank
viewers,
you.
for being with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Bye bye.